Hi, and thanks for watching this week's In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric. Thank you for joining us on this show. I know I'm going to learn a lot. Hopefully you will too, and hopefully through this conversation we'll be able to do some cleanup of some of the things that maybe shouldn't be here. Let me start by saying, first of all, a big thank you to Chris Hardy for hosting an In Focus program just a couple of weeks ago. If you missed it, his guests included Jeff Huffine, Nathan Hogg, and Allison Zeidel. I mentioned in my first conversation of the year that we would be having some guest hosts. Chris was the first of that. In a few weeks, Ken Chrisman, who is Vice Chancellor of University Relations here at Indiana University East, will also be bringing in some guests of his choosing, topics of his choosing, and that's part of what we're trying to do this year, particularly since we do not have elections. We want to introduce you to a few more people and a few more voices around the community. So we've asked some folks to guest host some shows. Also gives me a chance to step away. And thank you for watching, whether you're watching online, whether you're watching on WGTV Channel 11, whether you're watching this program on our YouTube channel, or maybe it's a Sunday morning, 6 a.m., and you're getting a walk-in or doing a workout, and you're listening to the audio of this program on ESPN Radio, 1490 AM, 100.9 FM, WKBV, or their sister station G1013. However you are seeing or watching this program, we thank you for spending some time with us. I want to bring in our guests because they've got a lot of great information. Liz Yetter and Jalen Sheet are both with us. Thank you very much for being here. You all are here together for the organization called WIPER, is the short way of putting it. WIPER stands for Wayne County Invasive Plant Education and removal. And removal is the big part of this thing, education and removal. But Liz, let's start with you. Let's first of all start with a little bit of background of who we're talking to.
So I moved here to Richmond in 2019 to take a position with State of Indiana Cooperative Invasive Management. It's a statewide nonprofit. And I work within Wayne County and 13 of the surrounding counties to help develop groups like WIPER. But because Richmond and Wayne County has now become my home, I'm also maybe a little more actively involved within the group itself now that it has been established.
What brought you to this problem?
I went to school for natural resource management. And when I got out of school, my first job was working in Minnesota, and I did a lot of removing of invasives and restoration work that way. And I was working seasonally, and so this kind of came up as an opportunity to work year-round and do more of an education focus because while a lot of this work happens on like our parks properties, but to get the public involved because everything touches in the environment. All those properties are biting up. So this is an opportunity to I work with a lot of private landowners, and they're like, what do I do on my property now? So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Okay. And Jalen Sheet, Jalen, you're home.
Yeah.
No, Sleet, rather. You're not in Minnesota or any place like that. Talk a little bit about your background for us.
Yeah. So I am from Richmond, Indiana. I went to RHS, and I was also a graduate of Earlham College 2018. And so I'm still working at Earlham College. So I'm the property manager of the Earlham Nature Reserve System. So Earlham is really blessed to have a lot of different properties that have been donated over the years. We have lots of forests, and we have some prairies. We actually just burned our prairie yesterday.
Is that a good thing?
That's a great thing.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where the prairie requires disturbance, and so burning that, especially kind of in a dormant season, allows everything to rejuvenate, and once things get growing again, it'll be beautiful and green. Right now, there's a lot of ash and such, but it's kind of like the phoenix, so it'll be rebirthed. But yeah, so I do a lot of invasive species management in my job, managing about 300 acres of forest.
Ooh.
So there's really a lot of work to be done, and I have a lot of assistance with students, and we have a volunteer base that we're growing. And so working with WIPER has been a great way to collaborate with different organizations in Wayne County that have similar goals, like Hayes Arboretum and Cope Environmental Center. So we're all really working together to address these invasive species.
We were talking before we started this recording. You're really kind of following the work of some other professors that have come through Earlham before you.
Yes. So like I said, these properties in my job, the properties were donated starting in the 80s. So there was a lot of different professors who had really specific backgrounds that utilized these properties for field research. And there's a really big component of having it be like an outdoor classroom. So we had John Iverson. He's an emeritus professor of herpetology, so he studies amphibians, snakes, salamanders, frogs, you name it. We have Brent Smith, who's also an emeritus professor, and he's a plant ecologist. So then we also have Bill Buskirk, our other emeritus professor, who's an ornithologist, so he studies birds. And they really pioneered this sort of field research program. And so they've done a lot of habitat restoration and management over the years. And so I can go back through all the records back to the 80s and see, where they cleared honeysuckle in this area, or they built this pond, or they did this to restore the ecosystem in various ways.
Nice.
And so it is really cool that I can continue that work and see what, and see how things progress and how you make strides and leaps and bounds over the years.
Let's talk about the term invasive species. Where does it kind of come from, and what do you all look for when you're looking for an invasive species? Because he said honeysuckle. I've heard honeysuckle a lot, and it's invasive. It's not supposed to be here.
So the invasive species definition that we primarily work off of is from a 1999 executive order from the president, where it's defined as a non-native species that causes some sort of harm, whether it's to the environment, to human health, or to infrastructure. So the big takeaway with that is they're non-native and they cause harm.
Okay.
So there are native plants that can get quite thick or maybe weedy in places we don't want, but because they are native to Indiana, they're never going to get that invasive distinction. They have to be outside of their native habitat and causing some sort of harm. So there's about 5 species of Asian bush honeysuckle and a vining honeysuckle. They're all considered invasive, but in northern Indiana, we actually have a native honeysuckle. Yeah.
Yeah. Also,
That's the appropriate reaction.
and I have found one native honeysuckle at Wildman Woods, one of our properties, grape honeysuckle. So it's this pretty small vining honeysuckle, and I at first thought it was Japanese honeysuckle, which is another vining honeysuckle that is invasive. But this is maybe a good example where you can see, you'll have things that are in the same genus, they're honeysuckle.
Okay.
You have specific species that didn't co-evolve with plants or pests in this ecosystem that kind of, you can think of it as like a check and balance. So our invasive ones, they haven't adapted with all of these other factors that stop them from being invasive, whereas we may have a native version of it that's not going to run rampant, so to speak, because of the way it's co-evolved.
I'm not even sure where to go with this. Okay, so you're trying to remove certain species of plants that are not native to Indiana. How did many of them, get here?
About 85% of plants that are considered invasive in Indiana were brought in through the landscaping trade. And this can date back all the way to when we were moving west from the original 13 colonies. So they've been here for hundreds of years.
Okay.
And they were brought in because we thought they were pretty, or they had a medicinal purpose, or it's something that the early settlers ate. So they were brought in to either be pretty and for us to enjoy them, or to solve a problem like kudzu, which is an invasive vine in the south, and moving into Indiana was brought in on old mining sites to stop erosion. It's now covering everything. So they were brought in to kind of be of service to us without thinking of if they were going to serve the greater environment.
They've been here long enough, because you're saying the migration west, wouldn't they, after a certain period of time, be considered native?
So in our minds, yes, but the speed at which the forest or the wild environment moves, not so much. A lot of our native insects and wildlife, they have certain things they need to eat. Like the monarch butterflies need the common milkweed plant in order to complete their life cycle, and they can't just switch. Like where if we go to the cupboard and we don't have toast for breakfast, we can have cereal, we can grab something on the way in.
Right.
A lot of these insects are very picky eaters, and they need certain plants in order to continue their life cycle.
Okay.
And the evolution to adapt to something else is very slow.
Okay. Are we losing helpful insects because they are losing some of their habitat?
Yes.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest issues with invasive species is that habitat loss, especially so like with honeysuckle, that's kind of our local, one of our top invasives. And so here in a couple weeks, towards the end of the month, you'll see honeysuckle is going to start leafing out. So you'll see the sea of lime green everywhere, and almost all of that's going to be honeysuckle. And so you can really get a visual of just how much space they're displacing natives that would be there. And so if you think of what would be there, coming up soon, spring ephemeral. So a variety of wildflowers will be blooming, but none of those will be able to bloom because the honeysuckle will be shading them out. So you can really think of it as like a physical space, a displacement of what our insects and animals and variety of wildlife need to survive.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric. Thanks for joining us. We're having a conversation with Liz Yetter and Jalen Sleet about invasive species, their removal, and educating the community about them. Let's move a little bit to the education portion of this. How is that done? Because you all just took me on a trip to northern Indiana with honeysuckle, which is good, but then there's honeysuckle that's bad. I'm a guy, got a yard, it looks pretty, it's going in. How do I know it's bad?
A little bit of research before going to buy something goes a long way.
It's pretty. It goes. The
Yes.
color goes great with
Yes.
the siding on my house.
And the
I don't need more research
The
than
thing
that.
is, we can find something that is pretty and native and goes with the siding of your house. Here in Indiana, we have a great native plant society, which is another statewide nonprofit completely run by volunteers, and they have all sorts of resources on where to find natives, what natives go good in the yard. So it's just a matter of doing a little bit of research and being a little more selective. Unfortunately, we're seeing more natives be available at some of like your big box garden centers. You're usually going to have to go find that specialty, more local nursery to get those native plants.
And that's the question. We are a few weeks, we keep our fingers crossed, from spring planting. Folks are going to be running out to buy plants. How do we avoid adding to the problem literally just a few weeks from now? What do we need to look for? Is there a special little code or something on the tag? I guess that's a no.
Yeah.
Huh? All right, so we're back to, it's a really nice color and it goes with my siding.
I would echo again the Indiana Native Plant Society. If you're on Facebook, there's a great resource just in that Facebook page. You can post something and you're going to have dozens of people ready to give you ideas about what natives you can plant that are a great alternative to invasive species. And it's also a place where you can ask, is this invasive? You can get identification assistance there. I'd also recommend iNaturalist is a great app you can use on your phone. So like you were saying, if you have this thing in your yard, you're not sure what it is, you can just take a photo and you can identify that through your phone. And a lot of the times you'll get comments from experts. Your local experts can comment and verify your identification of that plant. So there's a lot of ways you can use the internet to make things a lot easier as far as getting a sense of what's invasive, what's native, and what can I plant that still has that curb appeal, but is still beneficial to the environment.
And so locally, we have the Wayne County Soil and Water Conservation District every year does a native plant sale. So you can get guaranteed natives from them. And then Huddleston Farm
in Cambridge City.
Yeah. Does several large native plant sales throughout the year.
Okay.
As well as through my job, I go out to people's houses and we can take a walk around, whether it's your yard in town or 10 acres of woods in the back 40. And that's part of what I do is I go out and we talk about the good that's there because we always find something good. even though everyone thinks they have the worst invasive problem ever, there's always natives there, there's always something trying. And then we talk about what is invasive and how you can remove it. And then at the end, you'll get a packet either digitally or I still like paper copies of things, so I will mail out paper copies of stuff to people of this is what we talked about and here's some resources. So
All right.
if you're more hands-on, then.
Talked about invasive, talked a little bit about education. Let's talk a little bit about the removal, and we'll go back and we've got some pictures of some things that we're going to show, and we'll do a show and tell or something in a little bit. But talk about the removal, because that is an ongoing, literally almost monthly type thing during the spring and summer, not just through you, but even through various organizations. So talk about your organization and then the collaboration and as Wiper does this locally.
So statewide, we have about 45 SISMAs, which is what Wiper is. So cooperative invasive species management areas. These we have 45 of them representing 56 counties throughout the state of Indiana, which has been happening greatly over the last 7.5 years. Some of them are a little older than that, and they're mostly volunteer run. They're doing these events called weed wrangles throughout the state, which are those kind of branded work days, and we're averaging about 150 throughout the state each year of just ones that are being advertised as weed wrangles. There are some groups that go out on a monthly basis and do removal work. So there's a lot being done throughout the state of Indiana.
Okay.
Here in Wayne County, we average, we have about 6 weed wrangles a year, about 3 in the spring, maybe 4 in the fall, and we go out to different sites. We've been out to Hayes Arboretum, Cope Environmental Center, Earlham College in various places. We partner with Richmond Parks, and we're even looking this year to partnering with Red Tail Land Conservancy that has a property over in Hagerstown.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So,
If someone is interested in this problem situation, wants to join you all on a weed wrangle, that sounds like a whole lot of fun. That sounds like a whole lot of work too. Talk about how somebody connects with this organization. Do you all hold regular meetings? How do you all help educate those folks that they're pulling something bad, not something good?
So the first 30 minutes or so of a weed wrangle, they're usually about 2 hours, is education. And we teach them how to identify whatever species we're going after. We usually try to focus on 1 or 2. So whether it's, usually it's honeysuckle. Sometimes in the spring it's garlic mustard, which is a small pullable herbaceous plant. We tell them how to ID it. If we have a large group, we pair them up with folks who are more familiar. So they have a group, and we stay right together in the same area in order to remove it. So if you have questions, we're there to, there's experts available to ask those questions to make sure. Wiper meets about quarterly. Our next meeting is on June 9th at 10 a.m. at the Wayne County Soil and Water Office. But if you want to hang out with us before then, we're going to be at the Earlham Wellness Fair on April...
Go ahead. It's okay. You can pull your cheat sheet.
I did bring that.
I keep mine on my lap.
On April 10th at the Athletic Center. And then we're going to be on April 26th at the Family Earth Day celebration, which is out at Hayes Arboretum this year. So we get around to community events where we'll have a table set up, and either myself or Jalen or another member of our group will be there. We'll have handouts. You can bring us photos to be like, hey, what's this? We have an email address and a Facebook page. You can reach out to us that way. We are a volunteer-led group, so sometimes it takes us a little while to get back to you, but we will get back to you.
On Facebook, if they look up
Wiper SISMA.
Okay.
Again, with our acronyms. We'll teach you all the acronyms, I promise.
We'll teach you the alphabet soup.
Yes.
Don't worry about it.
Yes.
On these wrangles, just as people bring their own gloves, own bags, what do they need to supply?
We'll have tools for you, and we have some gloves, but if you have a favorite pair of gardening gloves, please bring them. Long pants, closed-toed shoes, and just dress.
I would bet.
Just dress for the weather. For the most part, as long as it's not thunderstorming or really cold, we go out. But just dress for the weather. We'll have, we usually have water and light snacks. So, yeah.
Okay. There are some photographs that you all sent along ahead of time. These are all invasives that I assume we can find here in Wayne County. So Ryan is kind of running this show. We're going to have him kind of pull up the first one and just talk to us a little bit, because somebody's going, oh, I got that in my yard. What is that? What is that?
Japanese barberry.
Yeah.
Japanese barberry. Okay.
This one is a pretty common landscaping ornamental shrub, but it escapes very readily, and it can really make a dense monoculture in your forest. So one of the places that I'm managing this particular invasive species is at Wildman Woods. And an easy way to identify this are those berries, which are technically drupes. So it's a small berry. They have kind of gnarly thorns. So, and you have these kind of elliptical leaves that really help it stand out. And if you were to break the root, it's this very bright yellow. So the roots are very helpful in identifying.
You mentioned that you're dealing with this in some woods. Is that where you would probably find that one most, or is that something that you're finding also in residential yards?
That is one. It has a lot of cultivars, meaning it's the same plant, but it might be a different color. So where it matches my siding comes in. It comes in a purple, a lime green, like rusty color red, and they're a shrub. When they're in your landscaping, they're very easy to shape into like a nice square or a nice circle. They're very compact. So especially in a lot of commercial landscaping, they hide, like if trash is blowing in, they kind of hide that because they're so dense.
Okay.
But that dense growing habit, when they get into the woods, it makes it really hard to walk through the woods, for things to migrate through the woods on the floor, and it just kind of creates this nice humid microclimate for mice, which are one of the primary vectors for baby ticks, which can carry Lyme disease. So they've seen an increase of instances of Lyme disease in wooded areas or natural areas that have been inundated with the barberry, because it just creates that nice sheltered habitat for their host, which is the white-footed mouse.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question. I've got it in my yard.
Oops,
I'm
sorry.
keeping it pretty contained, I think. Is that okay? Uh-oh.
If you have a snow globe covering over your yard and you're in a nice little bubble, yes, it's not getting out.
Okay.
Otherwise, even if it's not spreading directly where you're seeing a lot of seedlings, in your yard, the seed is getting spread around by birds and squirrels and chipmunks and all of that. It could be accidentally getting moved around if you're moving mulch in and out of your yard, or on the soles of your shoes if you're going from one place to another. So even if you can't directly see the spread, doesn't mean it's not spreading.
Okay. We're going to pick up the pace. The voice in my head is telling me we've got about 5 minutes left, so we're going to go through some of these pretty quickly. But I've already asked Liz and Jalen to come back in the fall so that we can continue to do this. They will have, and you heard her say we probably do 3 in the spring, 4 in the fall. They have a few more things in the fall. We're going to have them back because this sounds like a conversation and an education that needs to continue. So Ryan, we're going to pick this up a little bit. Nice color.
Yep, that's everyone's favorite winged burning bush, and it has that blaze red color in the fall. And this is another one where its genus is Euonymus, and we have a native Euonymus called Eastern Wahoo. So it's one where we have a native alternative to it, and there's plenty of other natives that turn bright red in the fall. But this was one landscaping, bright red. People bring it in, and it will do in the woods what the honeysuckle does. It'll just take over that understory.
Go.
This is Amur bush honeysuckle. So we've talked a lot about honeysuckle. This is the most common one that you'll find in the Midwest. So I said earlier it's getting ready to leaf out. So it'll be this kind of bright lime green monoculture all over any woods that it hasn't been removed in. You'll find it really in any, could be an old growth forest. It could be a little area that's just not mowed on the side of the road. It will pop up everywhere.
If I see this in my yard, I reach down and I just pull it. Is that cool?
Yeah, if you get it out by the root.
This
Okay.
is one that is relatively easy to remove by hand if they're small enough. They can be challenging. I love to use a weed wrench. So this is a tool that does most of the work for you. So it has like a big lever, and it kind of has this sort of large wrench that wraps around the base where you can just pull it out quite easily and get most of that root. But a lot of people will use herbicides, and there's a lot of ways to responsibly use herbicide that's very effective on this particular invasive.
Let's go. Next one.
So that is calorie pear. They are the white blooms that will be out shortly in the spring. They're a very common street tree, and those blooms come out before the leaves. So all those white flowering trees you see first thing in the spring, calorie pear.
Oh, and those aren't supposed to be here?
Correct.
Bummer. Okay.
Garlic mustard, another early spring one. This is one we go out and pull it out by hand. It is edible. People make pesto out of it.
Okay. It's edible. It's not, and it's... All right, never mind. Keep going.
That's a whole...
We'll come back to that
yes.
one in the fall.
This is Japanese barberry again, but in a landscape setting, one of those purple cultivars. So that's kind of what it looks like before it's being trimmed and maintained.
90 seconds. We're going to get two more in.
Here we have Asian bittersweet. This is one of the more challenging invasives to remove. I have quite a few areas where this is abundant. We have an American bittersweet. They can hybridize. The American bittersweet acts significantly less invasively than this one does. This one will girdle trees. It'll make a really, so you can see just how many seeds are on one small section.
Yeah.
So this persists into the winter, and birds spread it far and wide.
Okay. And the last one for today.
This is the flower for wild parsnip, poison hemlock. And this is one that, as the name suggests, it is poisonous to us as humans, it's poisonous to livestock, and it's one where I believe we have a leaf photo as well. It comes up in the early spring. It'll start coming up here within the next few weeks, and it looks like carrot tops coming out of the ground. And this is one that we have a reaction to it as well.
We have a reaction on our skin.
On our skin, and it can cause some internal. Don't ingest it. Don't test it. And it's one that you see a lot, roadside edges of ag fields at like sweater areas.
If someone wants to connect with you all one more time, how do they do it?
They can find us on Facebook at wipersysma, or they can shoot us an email at wipersysma@gmail.com.
Liz and Jalen, thank you both for being here. You all have created a lot of information. You've created some confusion, but you've passed on a lot of information.
Yes.
And we appreciate it. Folks, look for them on Facebook. We're going to have you back in the fall so we can kind of continue this, and folks can continue to look for some of the weed wrangles that are going to be going on. We'll take a break and be back with more In Focus in just a couple of minutes.
SmartHub is a web and mobile app that allows you to do business with us like never before. You can manage your account, view and pay your bill, monitor your uses 24/7, report outages, and receive important notices, all in the palm of your hand. You will be able to save time and money with features like paperless billing, autopay, and much more. For more details on SmartHub, visit us online. Presented by Richmond Power and Light, your locally owned electric utility, building Richmond a better tomorrow.
Hi, I'm John Duke with Wayne County Emergency Management. Spring weather is here. For the most current local updated information, we encourage everyone to sign up for public alerts through Nixle. The easiest way to sign up for Nixle is text 888-777 in the to field of a text message, and then enter your zip code in the body and hit send. For the most current information, whatever the situation may be, we encourage the public to sign up.
And welcome back to In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. Thank you very much for spending time with us again, whether you're watching on WGTV Channel 11, whether you're watching this off of our Facebook page or our YouTube channel, maybe you're watching streaming on WGTV online or listening to the audio on radio. We thank you for spending time with our In Focus program. We are glad to have back with us John Duke from Wayne County Emergency Management, but he brought the big guy with him.
I brought the boss.
He has
Absolutely.
avoided coming to talk to me for years.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. So.
Matthew Kane, thanks for
Absolutely.
being here, seriously.
Of course, absolutely.
For folks who may not know, let's start with you because it's been a while since you've been here. Provide us with a little bit of your background, what brought you to emergency management. Are you native to Wayne County? Catch us up.
Sure, absolutely. Born and raised in Wayne County on a farm in rural Wayne County between Williamsburg and Economy. Been in the county, for several years. Worked in the county for several years. Started dispatching at the 911 center here in 2001, and then also was a paramedic in Richmond with then Rural Metro for a number of years before going back to dispatch full time. So that's my background. Come from volunteer fire department service from the time I was 18. Fire, EMS, and dispatch background is where I came from.
That volunteer fire thing continues to change and evolve. And
Oh, it does. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And John Duke back with us again. John's been with us a couple of times, but provide a little background on yourself real quick for those who don't know you.
I also have a very similar background to Matthew. Many years in a volunteer fire service role, EMS as well, and the 911 center, which made my transition to emergency management a pretty easy decision. So,
For those who are new to the area, and we always know that we've got some new folks coming in, talk a little bit about what emergency management for Wayne County is and encompasses, because it may not be the same everywhere you go and every place you've ever lived.
True. So emergency management for Wayne County, we kind of act as the liaison between locals and government officials. We work very closely with Indiana Department of Homeland Security, which in turn works very closely with FEMA. So we are kind of that medium in between to help pass information back and forth. Our office is charged with doing a lot of the planning and preparedness at the county level, having specific plans in place, a comprehensive emergency management plan. Oh my goodness, there's so many. Continuity of operations plan, severe weather plan.
Continuity of operations, just to kind of pull that one out. What does
Absolutely.
that mean?
So the citizens, of course, expect business as usual no matter what is going on. And so, and it applies not only for county government, but any business or office should have some sort of a continuity of operations, that if there is a disruption, whatever that may be, whether it's an extended power outage, whether it's displacement due to an unfortunate fire, how are you going to continue to provide the services that your business provides? In our case, it's the emergency management or the 911 center.
Correct.
We have to be able to continue the operations and those services for the county. And so what does that look like? What things do we have to have in place?
There is an expectation by the public that we don't close. And so we have to have plans like that so we can continue to operate and provide services to the residents.
Last time we talked to you, in particular, we've had a chance to see John. Last time we talked to you, though, we were actually in your facility. It was during the pandemic, and you were talking about kind of following the plan that had been created and been left. I assume that's what you're talking about in terms of continuity and working through almost anything. Are you completely on the other side of what that pandemic plan is or was? I know we're 5 years removed from it, and everybody thinks it's all gone. There's still people wearing masks. There are people still getting COVID. So talk about where you all are in terms of that and how your operation worked through that for the county.
Well, exactly that. Any type of these events, that whether it be severe weather or the continuity of operations or the pandemic plan, it is just that. It was something that, John and I had never been faced with a global pandemic before, as a lot of people in our professions had not.
And let's not do it again.
And we're not going to do it
Oh,
again,
come
we hope.
on.
No.
But at least that plan gave us a starting point of these are the things that need to happen. These are the people you need to have at the table, and really got us in a moment where we're like, oh boy, what are we about to, encounter? Kind of helped us focus on some of the things we were able to manage in a time that several things were out of our control.
It was a very steep learning curve.
Yeah.
It was a trial by fire.
And we
So-
relied very heavily on the health department at that time to offer guidance and things like that. As opposed, or going back to your original question as to kind of where we are at with that, I would like to say that as far as the plan goes, that part is done and completed.
Okay.
Are there certain aspects of that plan that are still in place or in play? Absolutely. You mentioned a couple of them. Folks are still wearing masks, taking extra precautions. Seen a huge spike in influenza and COVID, currently at local
Seeing a
health
lot on
systems.
social media, people are getting a bug, a flu, a bronchitis, and it keeps recurring, and they're feeling down longer, it seems.
Right. Some of that could be from the effects of the pandemic still with individuals' immune systems and things like that. So, but as far as the plan goes, that plan has been put back on the shelf for right now.
How do you all take it and update it? How do you all take it, put in what you learned versus what was assumed?
So we take away what we call after-action reports usually, and we use those to help us develop and rewrite and revise and improve our plans as we go. They're constant living creature. They get touched as regularly as we can, updated, things like that. I just updated the severe weather plan since spring is coming before us rapidly.
We have our fingers crossed. We're hoping.
I know, yes, we do. But we constantly work on those, and every event or incident, we take something away and we try and incorporate it and add it if needed to our emergency plans.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're spending some time with Matthew Kane, John Duke, Wayne County Emergency Management. You mentioned spring. It brings with it, after the winter, some of its own issues, problems. Let's before we push the winter away, even though we're trying to very, very quickly.
Rapidly, yes, please.
How did you all come through that? And I know one of the things that residents, there's people yelling at their TV. What about these travel advisories? Just real quickly, talk about how that gets decided.
Sure.
When it starts, when it ends, who's responsible, who makes the call, who do we yell at, and why can't we travel on certain roads even though they look clear?
Sure. No, absolutely. The way the travel advisory works, it's all established by county ordinance, several years in place now, with an interlocal agreement with the city of Richmond and the town of Centerville. For the level 1 advisory, which is the very base, just letting them know that road conditions are deteriorating. It's a collaborative decision between emergency management, the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, and the Wayne County Highway Department. Okay. And we get on a conference call and we see what, we talk about what we're seeing.
Yeah, observations, basically.
You're out driving the roads, the sheriff's out driving the roads, that type of thing?
Correct.
Absolutely. Monitoring the 911 calls coming in, where the accidents and slide-offs are happening, or if they are happening, and things like that. And that's kind of what drives that decision.
And you all can agree, but you still have to have approval from the commissioners?
Not for the level 1.
Not for the level 1?
Not for the level 1.
Okay.
However, anytime we go above that for a level 2 watch or a level 3 warning, it involves the commissioners, and they have to approve that because it constitutes a declaration of emergency, which only the county commissioners can do for the county. So the level 2 is for essential travel only to and from work, pharmacy, grocery, things, some of those types of things.
The essential things you need for to maintain your livelihood or your living conditions.
But it's just that extra level of caution and concern because county highway can only keep up on some of their roadways as best they can. Mm-hmm. And again, these levels are only for those roads maintained by the county or the city of Richmond or the town of Centerville. It does not apply to any of the state or federal highways, including I-70, 27, 35, 38. We have several state highways and U.S. highways in the county, actually. Right. And these levels don't apply to those. We have no jurisdiction over those roads, just strictly the county roads.
Okay. We're moving into spring, and there's always a change. People take the shovels out of their cars. They take the kitty litter out of their cars.
I've already taken all of that stuff out of mine.
Very hopeful.
You have a chance to see the weather far and ahead and probably know much more than we do.
I've already taken all that stuff out. So it'll probably turn around and get me, but that's okay.
And what do we put back in once we take that stuff out?
So severe weather is, spring severe weather comes the threat of thunderstorms, isolated tornadoes, high wind, all the things that we live in Indiana. Most of us have been here a while, and we know what it's like to be in Indiana in the springtime. So we urge preparedness. That's our goal, because people, the more we can get our message out in front of people, the better off they are to take care of themselves. So Matthew or I or the other responders can take care of the people who can't. So that's the message we like to put out there. Severe Weather Preparedness Week is coming up. Do you want to talk about that? That was yours.
Yeah, March 9th through the 15th is Severe Weather Awareness Week for the state of Indiana. Okay. It's just a time that's set aside to, we'll see a lot of social media posts from not only our office, but other responder agencies or at the state level, just urging residents to stop and think about how you can prepare yourself to be more resilient during spring weather, whether that be preparing for a power outage, whether that be making sure that you have emergency a plan in place for your family at home or at work. Where are you going to go to seek shelter? Should there be a tornado warning for the area? You know, all those types of things. Just stop and think about what some of those actions should be, what you could have in place prior to the event happening. Or should it happen?
The best time to let me rephrase that. Being prepared gives you the ability to handle a situation. You can't get ready for a storm when it hits. So you have to get ahead of the game and have, as Matthew alluded, your plan, your communication plan, have a supply kit, just the necessary things that you need to operate your household, including your pets, for about 72 hours. And that includes medication, extra eyeglasses, food and water, important documents, all the things that might become important if you had to displace or move from your residence. You also should have a small supply kit in your vehicle in case you were to have some kind of emergency. It's always a good idea. It's a good idea to keep a couple toys and some little activity books if you have young children to keep them entertained, especially if you have to leave. So it's just, we want them to be aware and think about the things that they would use on a daily basis to maintain their household.
You want them to be aware, so you need them to know when something is coming at them, and that's where Nixle and some of the preparedness in that way comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a local service here within the county that our office has mass notification alerts. And residents or visitors can sign up to receive those alerts. They come directly from the National Weather Service through our office and onto this platform. It's very easy to sign up, just texting the zip code of where you're at or where you live to 888-777, and that immediately enrolls them into those notifications, and they can choose whether it's text message or email or how they prefer to receive those. But that gives citizens at least an idea of the different advisories, watches, and warnings that are coming out so that we can help try to prepare them as best as possible.
Another way that folks can be prepared is to look at the sky and somewhat know what's coming at them, or at least be able to, oh, clouds are pretty. That's kind of my
Correct.
fallback.
Yeah.
Correct.
But there is more to it than that.
There is, and they talk about see something, say something. I know that's off the subject, but if you're aware of what's going on around you, you're already more prepared. If you look outside and it's sprinkling, you grab the umbrella. Well, you're already more prepared than what you were when you opened the door. So you keep that awareness up, and you're starting to get ahead of the game.
Yeah. And so to your point, one thing that we are offering this year is a weather spotter program that we're hosting here within Wayne County. We've partnered with our neighbors in Preble and Darke County.
I was going to say, this has been
We've done it
across
for
the state
several
line
years,
before.
but we haven't been able to host it here. Of course, during COVID, everything was kind of postponed. So it was been before COVID that we've hosted a class here. So on Monday, March 17th, 6:30 p.m. at the First Bank Coleman Center, we are hosting a community weather spotter program. It's just a great educational opportunity that is taught by National Weather Service meteorologists about what to expect and what that pretty cloud might look like, or is it deceiving because what does something else following it,
right?
Type of thing. So it's a great educational opportunity for the community. Children are welcome because it's a great learning program for them as well.
It is a really good educational opportunity for anyone, really. We have older citizens. We have all the way down to Boy Scout troops that come in, and anybody in between. There is a lot of information that's passed, but it's all valuable, and it again leads to that preparedness moment where you understand exactly, as we talked about, what that cloud may be or what it means.
Folks want to sign up for that. How do they do it?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a QR code that takes directly to a registration. It's very simple, takes less than 2 minutes. There's a link that's on our social media posts as well. And then obviously if they need assistance by any means, they're welcome to contact the office as well, and we'll absolutely help them get registered for that. Registration is not required, but we highly recommend it just so we know what to expect and how many people, and we can be prepared.
We're also able to track a little bit better on what our numbers are for each county because we're partnering together.
Yeah.
So, we may have X amount of people show up, but we have no measurable metric to say, okay, well, we have got this many people from Wayne County and we got this many people from Preble. So it's also for us to have some
Tracking
kind of
purposes.
measurable tracking.
Are you able to keep up with folks who take this course, and are they able to feed you information later? Have you had that happen?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And matter of fact, we actually encourage them to report the information directly to the National Weather Service. We'll get out of the middle of it, especially if it's something with an immediate, some type of immediate need or information that needs passed along quickly. Now, when it comes to after the storm, reporting storm damage and things like that, that's where we take the lead, and those can be reported to our office. But yeah, absolutely, that's one of the main missions of these education sessions by the National Weather Service, is because they're looking for those community volunteers to assist them in reporting what they're seeing. Radar's only good for so much.
Right.
They actually need eyes on the ground as to what's happening. So
They rely on it.
yeah.
So it's very important. It is a great service and a great educational moment.
You're watching In Focus on WGTV Channel 11. We're spending time with John Duke, Matthew Kane from Wayne County Emergency Management. We've got about 8 minutes or so left. Before we went on the air, I mentioned to you I have not in my lifetime had to call 911. I assume I'm not the only person. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about, if I had to call 911, what type of things can I know? What can I do to make the call go easier, smoother, so that I can get the help or the response that I'm looking for?
Sure, absolutely. It's a great question, and it's. I hope folks don't have to call 911, but it is good to know what that might look like behind the scenes and what's going on. The first question you're going to be asked is 911. Where is your emergency? That is the most important key information for the dispatchers to obtain is where is this occurring. And then they'll follow with an onslaught of questions as to what is going on. Is it fire related, medical, law enforcement related? They're going to ask for your name. They're going to ask for your callback number. If the phone gets disconnected for whatever reason, that way they've got the number. Yes, it does come into the computer, but we like to verify that
Sure.
to make sure the technology is working. And then just be prepared. Dispatchers are trained to get the most information in the shortest amount of time. John worked as a supervisor for years in the 911 center, so he gets that and understands it. But I want people to understand that all because those questions are being asked does not mean that the delay or that there is a delay in the response. We have a minimum of 4 to 5 dispatchers on duty around the clock. So while you are speaking to one dispatcher and the dispatcher's asking you questions, the 4 others in the room are dispatching the responders to the emergency. And so all because seems like a lot of questions, that does frustrate callers from time to time. Well, why are you asking me the questions? Just get them here.
Right.
Please know that that's occurring. It's just going on in the background simultaneously. And of course, unless you've been in the room when that 911 call comes in, you don't see that. And you don't see that on the phone when you're talking to the dispatcher. It's a highly emotional time for the caller. It's probably their worst day that they've ever had. And so our dispatchers are trained to try to get them to calm down so we can understand them and get the information as quickly as possible so we can get the right responders there.
What do we tell kids? We're in an age where kids have their own phone. They're home, maybe not even with a parent. They may be home with a grandparent. They may be home with a smaller child, and they find a need to call 911. What should we have told them ahead of time? What do we want to make sure they know or have available to them?
No, absolutely. And quite frankly, children can be our best callers sometimes because they don't know to have some of the emotion and panic that adults do. So they actually follow the line of questioning that the dispatcher has better and more appropriately than adults sometimes, if we're being
You can learn
honest.
from the kids.
That's exactly right. That's exactly. But it goes back to some of those basic principles that a lot of children are taught, knowing their address and maybe their phone number or their parents' names if they're still used to referring to mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. Making sure they know their parents' names. And what I've seen and what we encourage is maybe posting it on the refrigerator or somewhere where they know where to get that information, or a piece of mail that's got the address on it or something like that. But children are smarter than we sometimes give them credit for, and they pick up on things like that. And so there are better callers some days. So.
All right. We've got about 3.5 minutes left, and I'm going to ask each one of you all, you'll have to figure out how to divide it up, and I'm going to start with you. Minute or so, what do you want people to know, remember, take away from this conversation?
1, have multiple means of notifications. We all live and die by our mobile devices. anymore. You have yours on your lap right there. And so we live and die by those devices, and we're tied to them very much. Have multiple means of notifications. We talked about the Nixle sign up. We also encourage residents to have some kind of means of notification in their residence. You may have your phone in the kitchen and you be in the bedroom. And if you don't have, let's say, a NOAA, a National Weather Service all-hazard radio in the house or in the home, you may not know that your phone's going off, and you could potentially miss something that you really should be paying attention to. So I do encourage multiple means of notification. Have your supply kit. Practice your practice your plan. Your plan, if you don't practice it, it's not going to go as well as it could. So, and especially if you have young children, and any young children watching this, encourage your parents to participate and take it a little more seriously. Sometimes adults don't, but practice that plan, have that ready, and that way, when something does happen, you're going to be better off.
Matthew, same question.
No, just to piggyback off of that, I think it's important that a lot of us are ingrained about the outdoor warning sirens, that it's not a true emergency until we hear those sirens.
Right.
Quite frankly, that's a very outdated and antiquated system, and should be kind of used as a last resort. They're only meant to be heard when you're outdoors, not around other means of receiving those notifications that John talked about. We all have our own personal notification device in our pocket with your cell phone, and that's much more reliable and quicker getting the information than those outdoor warning sirens and the upkeep and maintenance of those. So please don't rely on those solely when it comes to severe weather especially. But just keeping in mind, the Emergency Management Office is a resource for the community. We want to help. We want to be out in the community. A lot of people don't even know that we're down in the basement of the administration building.
You're hidden pretty well.
We are hidden very well, but that's not to. We want to be out in the community. We want people to know who we are and what we do, what resources that we can provide. A lot of times we are not the expert in all the things that we have to cover under our realm, but we do know who to call. And that is our job, is getting the right resources to the emergency. And so that's how we can help the community.
Cool. Thank you both for being here. It's good to
Appreciate
see you.
it.
Thanks for being back. Matthew Kane, John Duke, Wayne County Emergency Management. Also want to thank Liz Yetter and Jalen Sleet for being with us from Wiper and talking about invasive species a little bit earlier in this show. Thanks for watching this week's In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I hope you have yourself a great weekend, and as always, I wish you well.